August 14, 1984. The private studio at Paisley Park in Chanhassen, Minnesota, was shrouded in the kind of creative intensity that only emerged during Prince's most inspired late-night recording sessions. It was 2:47 a.m., and the 26-year-old musical genius had been working alone for nearly 8 hours, meticulously layering track after track for what would eventually become part of his Purple Rain album. In the soundproofed sanctuary of Studio A, surrounded by walls lined with gold records and vintage synthesizers, Prince sat at his custom white Honor piano, completely absorbed in a hauntingly beautiful solo piece that seemed to channel every emotion he had ever experienced. The melody was so personal, so raw, that he had dismissed his usual team of engineers and session musicians hours earlier, wanting to capture this particular musical moment in complete solitude. But when the studio's heavy doors suddenly swung open and 25-year-old Sheila Escovedo, the fierce percussionist known professionally as Sheila E, walked in uninvited with her signature drumsticks in hand, neither artist had any idea they were about to create what music historians would later call the most transcendent and legendary unrehearsed collaboration in popular music history. A 45-minute musical conversation so profound and spontaneous that bootleg recordings of it would be traded among musicians. If you want to discover the magical moments when musical legends created pure artistry through spontaneous collaboration, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. What you're about to witness proves that the greatest music happens when talented artists trust each other enough to let go of all control and simply follow where the music leads. The relationship between Prince and Sheila E had been intensely musical from their first meeting in early 1984. Sheila came from musical royalty. Her father, Pete Escovedo, was a renowned Latin percussionist who had played with Santana. By the time she met Prince, Sheila had established herself as one of the most technically proficient and creatively adventurous drummers in contemporary music, blending Latin percussion, jazz complexity, and rock power. Prince had been immediately struck by Sheila's musical fearlessness and her ability to match his relentless creative energy. Unlike many musicians in his orbit, Sheila never seemed intimidated by his legendary perfectionism. She challenged him musically, pushing both artists into unexplored creative territories. That summer of 1984 was unprecedented creativity for Prince. He was simultaneously working on Purple Rain, developing material for Sheila E.'s debut album, and experimenting with new sounds. But the pressure was enormous. Purple Rain had to be perfect to achieve the mainstream success that could transform him from cult favorite to global superstar. That week, 22-year-old recording engineer Sarah Williams had been documenting the Purple Rain sessions for a potential behind-the-scenes documentary. She had witnessed countless legendary recording moments, but had never seen Prince in such an emotionally vulnerable state during those late August nights. Paisley Park was designed to be Prince's ultimate creative sanctuary, a place where he could work without external pressures. Studio A was equipped with state-of-the-art equipment but had an intimate spiritual quality that encouraged artistic risk-taking. Prince had designed it to feel like a combination of professional facility and private meditation space. On August 14th evening, Prince had been working on a piano piece unlike anything in his catalog, a deeply personal composition exploring themes of love, loss, and spiritual searching. The piece had no lyrics, no traditional structure, and didn't fit commercial categories. It was pure musical expression, raw artistic statement created for himself rather than audiences. By 2:30 a.m., Prince had been playing variations of the same theme for nearly 2 hours, each iteration revealing new emotional depths. He was completely lost in the music, unaware of anything outside his piano and the studio's acoustics. Sheila E. had flown back from Los Angeles that evening because she knew Prince was in an intensive creative period. When she arrived at Paisley Park around 2 a.m., she could hear the haunting piano music from Studio A before entering the building. "I stood outside Studio A for probably 10 minutes, Sheila later recalled, just listening to this incredible music that seemed to come from someplace deeper than technical skill. It was like Prince was having a conversation with something beyond himself." Before we reveal what happened when Sheila entered that sacred creative space, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been so moved by someone else's artistic expression that you felt compelled to respond creatively yourself? How did that moment change your understanding of collaboration? Share your thoughts in the comments below. When Sheila entered, she did so quietly, hoping not to disturb Prince's concentration. But the studio's sensitive acoustics made even the soft door opening cause Prince to pause and look toward the entrance. For several seconds, neither spoke. Prince's hands remained poised over keys, while Sheila stood with her drumsticks, which she carried everywhere, clutched in her hand. "Don't stop," Sheila whispered. "That music, it's incredible. Please keep playing." Prince studied her face, seeing something that told him she understood the emotional territory he'd been exploring. Without speaking, he returned to the keys, but now his approach was more open, more welcoming, as if inviting Sheila into the musical conversation. What happened next would be discussed by musicians for decades. Without verbal communication or planning, Sheila began tapping a subtle rhythm on her thighs, creating percussion accompaniment that perfectly complemented Prince's piano work. The rhythm was supportive and intuitive, adding gentle pulse that enhanced the melody's emotional impact without competing for focus. Prince immediately recognized what Sheila was doing and began adjusting his playing to accommodate her rhythmic contributions. Within minutes, they had established a musical dialogue that was both spontaneous and remarkably sophisticated. After 10 minutes, Sheila moved to the drum kit, maintaining her subtle, supportive approach. This wasn't a drum solo or technical showcase. It was conversation between equals, with both artists contributing ideas and responding to each other's musical suggestions. Prince began expanding his piano work to include more complex harmonies and rhythmic patterns, inspired by Sheila's percussion to explore territories he'd never considered when playing alone. The piece evolved from simple piano meditation into complex, multi-layered composition incorporating jazz, classical, Latin percussion, and R&B without losing its emotional core. Now I want to ask you something that might change how you think about creative collaboration. When have you experienced a moment where working with someone else unlocked creative possibilities you never knew existed within yourself? The most magical part of this story is about to unfold. As their collaboration continued, both artists began taking more creative risks, pushing each other into increasingly adventurous territory while maintaining the intuitive connection that made their dialogue possible. Prince's piano became more percussive and rhythmically complex, while Sheila's drumming incorporated melodic elements that complemented Prince's harmonic choices. The music told a story neither could have explained in words. There were moments of tension and release, quiet introspection and explosive catharsis, sections that felt like conversations between friends and others, resembling passionate arguments, resolved through musical compromise. Around the 20-minute mark, Prince began playing patterns inspired by classical music, incorporating complex counterpoint and harmonic progressions. Sheila responded by adapting her Latin percussion techniques to complement these classical elements, creating rhythmic patterns that enhanced rather than competed with Prince's sophisticated harmonic work. The result was musical fusion neither could have achieved alone, composition that honored both Prince's classical training and Sheila's Latin heritage while creating something entirely new. They were no longer just jamming, they were composing in real time, creating complete musical statement with clear formal structure despite being entirely spontaneous. As they approached the climax, both artists sensed their conversation building toward resolution. The climax was both explosive and controlled, a moment where all musical themes suddenly coalesced into a unified statement of extraordinary power. Prince's piano and Sheila's drums seemed to merge into a single instrument, creating sounds neither could have produced independently. The resolution was equally remarkable. Without verbal cues, both simultaneously began bringing the piece to a close, gradually reducing complexity, while maintaining the emotional connection that sustained their collaboration. The final minutes returned to the simple, meditative quality of Prince's original solo work, now enriched by everything that had occurred during their 45-minute journey. When the music ended, both remained motionless for several moments, stunned by the intensity and beauty of what they'd created together. The silence was profound and respectful, filled with the awe that follows truly transcendent artistic experiences. Prince began, then stopped, apparently unable to find words adequate to describe what had just occurred. "I know," Sheila replied simply, understanding exactly what Prince couldn't articulate. Sarah Williams later said that the silence following their collaboration was as powerful and meaningful as the music itself. You could feel that both of them understood they had just experienced something rare and special, the kind of creative moment that artists spend their entire careers hoping to encounter. The recording equipment had been running throughout the entire session, capturing every note, every rhythmic nuance, every moment of musical discovery. What resulted was not just a bootleg recording, but a complete documentation of how two master musicians could create sophisticated, emotionally resonant music through pure intuition and mutual trust. Both artists were visibly moved by what they had accomplished. Prince, who was known for his perfectionism and his habit of doing multiple takes until every detail was exactly right, had just participated in a completely spontaneous creative process that had produced music of extraordinary beauty and complexity. Sheila, who had built her career on technical precision and carefully choreographed performances, had just experienced the freedom of pure musical improvisation at the highest level. The technical aspects of what they had accomplished were equally remarkable. Neither artist had used sheet music, predetermined arrangements, or even basic discussion about key signatures or tempo. Everything had emerged organically from their musical interaction, yet the result was a composition with clear formal structure, sophisticated harmonic development, and emotional coherence that rivaled anything either had created through conventional methods. The session also demonstrated the power of musical vulnerability. Both artists had allowed themselves to be completely open to the other's creative influence, abandoning the protective barriers that often prevent genuine artistic collaboration. Prince had set aside his usual need for complete creative control, while Sheila had moved beyond her role as a supporting musician to become an equal creative partner in real time. The immediate impact extended beyond that evening. Prince recognized that his Purple Rain approach needed to incorporate musical discoveries from his session with Sheila. Several tracks were revised to include more complex rhythmic elements and greater emphasis on melodic percussive interplay. Sheila E.'s solo career was similarly transformed. Her debut album demonstrated new musical sophistication that critics attributed to her increased confidence as performer and composer. The collaborative techniques she developed during the Paisley Park session became hallmarks of her distinctive style. The 45-minute recording remained in Prince's private vault for years, known only to those present that night. But bootleg copies eventually circulated among musicians, becoming one of the most sought-after unreleased recordings in popular music history. Jazz musicians studied the session for its demonstration of spontaneous composition. Classical composers analyzed its sophisticated harmonic development. Rock and R&B artists were inspired by its proof that complex music could emerge from completely unplanned collaborative processes. Years later, both artists continued to cite that August night as one of their most important creative experiences. Prince often told musicians the session taught him about letting go of control and trusting collaborative instincts. Sheila credited the experience with giving her confidence to pursue increasingly ambitious projects. In 1999, Prince and Sheila E. reunited for a special Paisley Park performance, attempting to recreate some of their legendary collaboration's magic. While beautiful and sophisticated, both acknowledged it couldn't duplicate the spontaneous quality that made their 1984 session special. Today, music educators use the Prince Sheila E. session as an example of collaborative creativity at its highest level, demonstrating how technical mastery, emotional openness, and mutual respect can produce artistic results that transcend individual achievement. The lesson from that magical August night remains relevant for any creative person. The most profound artistic breakthroughs often happen not when we're trying to control or direct the creative process, but when we're brave enough to trust our collaborators and follow wherever the art itself wants to lead us. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of music history's most spontaneous and magical collaborative moments. If this story inspired you to seek out opportunities for creative collaboration or to trust in the power of artistic spontaneity, please subscribe and share your own experiences of unexpected creative breakthroughs in the comments below.